Okay. Hello, hello. Hello, everybody. I guess everybody in the future. Do we have any viewers right now? You know, say if you're not here. Anyway, um, so welcome back to this final session of me breaking down this melting ice material. Hopefully not literally. I would like the graph to sort of keep working in the future. But yeah, I would like to, you know, walk you through the crazy mess I did. I made, you know, when I was like trying to put together a fairly complex albedo map. I'm not too proud of it. I wouldn't definitely do it the same way next time. Either way, I'll show it to you, and I guess you can get inspired. First of all, as to how to put a simple albedo map together in InstaMAT. It's not really not that difficult, especially if you've seen something like Substance Designer, of course, or even like shading in Blender. It's very similar. And then I'll talk about like how to sort of again retain control over your graph, how to maybe blend colors together in a, let's say, more predictable way. Again, I'm still not sure what the best practice is, especially for a material like ice, but we are going to talk about that as well. And yeah, in the end, I'll just briefly walk you through some normal map creation and like final polish and how to export something like this from InstaMAT. So let's get to it. Again, if you're here, please do not hesitate to talk to me in chat. Not that I'm much of a YouTube schmo, but I definitely don't like talking to myself for hours on end in a foreign language. So any interaction helps with my blood pressure. You know what I mean. Anyhow, let's press this button called transition. Hello, Royal J, welcome back, and let's get to it. So, here we are, back with our ice material, and also I'm very proud and humbled to say that I won the third place in the Nodevember contest, which this material actually won it for me. So I am very pleased with that, of course. I don't know how many competitors there were and what exactly were the criteria. I'm not saying that this material is awesome or anything, but I did put quite a bit of work into it, and so being acknowledged helps. So thank you, InstaMAT. I now have a pro license and I have a hoodie coming in. So I'll maybe I'll post a photo of myself wearing InstaMAT hoodie, but maybe not again. Anyhow, I would like to highlight I came in third, but I would like to highlight the other winners. So this is, I'm sorry, I'm not going to pronounce his name. He's from Lithuania. Congratulations for this awesome, deserty, sandy. What is that? Is that sandstone? I suppose sandstone rocks. It has a very like tactile feel to it. You can almost feel like it's going to fall apart in your hands, but at the same time, it's this like rock that you would find in like let's say some iron-rich mountains. I'm really impressed with like how much of a story this tells in terms of a almost monochromatic image. Really cool stuff. Yeah, and especially like you can see, it actually works to scale. I don't think my material works to scale that well, but yeah, this little I don't know X-wearing girl, whatever it is, puts it right in the context. I like it. Really cool stuff. So that's Mr. I'm not going to pronounce his name, but congratulations on coming in first. The second one is again, of course, Dan Betke, InstaMAT material artist, and I dare say my friend. He made this amazing basalt, lava, river material with a lot of warping, a lot of bending, a lot of like heat deterioration to the material, an emission channel. It's pretty cool. I especially like this one, this HDRI with this like blue-red high contrast uh, image. It's pretty cool. So congrats, really cool stuff. I can't wait for the video. He promised to deliver a video himself on his channel, so definitely check it out. And this is just him like showing it without the emission. On its own, pretty interesting shapes, right? But the emission just brings it to another level with these like hotspots and all that. Really cool stuff. Yep, and of course my own little thingy, which is this material. So, by the way, if you press Alt C, it switches between these three modes on top, so you can like quickly preview your material, outside of the small window, and you can switch it with the texture as well. Not that that's that useful, but you can still like examine it closely. You can see that it's fairly jagged here, very very pixelated almost, but it's a binary mask, right? So that's what it is. And Alt C will bring the graph into the main view. So just to recap quickly what we already went through. So essentially we started with like creating these like large shapes. We used a Voronoi cell pattern. We distorted it, warped it a lot. We also added a sort of a custom-made scratches generator, which is just do like random scatters of a line that's slightly distorted, and that makes these like skate marks. Yeah. Then we created these shapes inside, let's call them rivers for now, and those are just like Voronoi patterns subtracted from each other and blended in. We did that a couple of times for a lot of things. We also used the classic flood fill into gradient to give our eyes a little bit of, like my eyes, I suppose, a bit more height difference, height sort of detail. It's not very strong. Uh, it's uh, it's just like a subtle thing that might show if you're looking at an angle. I think it's just good practice not to have your like materials entirely flat, but at the same time this is ice, so we do not want it to be displaced as, for example, the rocks in the winner's image. Yeah. La 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 la. That's what we did. We blended it together. We added some more scratches. Those are just like subtle scratches. I think you can see them here. Again, like a bit more of a you know, just adding more of the same details in a way. Nothing too difficult. We distorted it, them again, etc. So this was like our first really important mask, which basically separated the rivers from the main ice flow shapes. Okay, so RailJ says it will be more useful when they are going to add the possibility to make modifications within the image editor. Within the image, what do you mean exactly? What kind of modifications? And what do you mean by image editor? Uh, do you mean like this window right here, or what exactly are we talking about? So yeah, this is our like mask that separates the main shapes. Uh-huh. And then I started working on many different things at once, to be honest, mostly for the albedo map already, because ice, again, doesn't have much in terms of like actually height detail. Yeah. Yeah, if you mean drawing in 2D space, yeah, they said it's coming, right? Like it even says that especially in the painting mode in the what's it called, the layering project. You can't draw in the 2D space yet, which is a big thing, of course. I use that all the time in Painter. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just like painting in 2D space. Yes, I imagine that's coming, or it might be coming in this update. I don't know, or coming right now. I hope so, because that's fairly essential. Some of the stuff you just can't do from like volume mask projections or other projection types. Sometimes it's just easier to get your UV island and just draw it there. I agree. But for procedural material creation, this is actually like not that important. In fact, there is a in painting or painting node. If let's just type, yeah, mesh painting, mesh mask painting, mesh painting. And nope, painting. I forgot the node. Paint in paint mask. No, that's for synthesis. There is a node where you can like plug in your mesh with UVs unwrapped, and you can just paint it in, but inside that node, right? So it's like the functionality is almost there, but it's just not here in the viewports. Anyway, let's not get distracted. Let's go back. So I to my material. So we basically started working on a lot of the surface details, which are mostly albedo maps, some displacement still, but you know, not that much. Especially these like interior cracks. We last time we spoke about how uh, difficult it is actually to make a texture of ice without including the render and the shading, right? Like you're just layering colors and grayscale values, but you don't really have any control over, let's say, how the rays are going to interact with the depth of the volume of the ice, right? So you just have to fake depth, and in this case, I created. I'm adopting these like weird YouTube, affectations. No, uh, like I slow blurred and warped a lot of the cracks to create these like little, I suppose, like suggestions of painting, sorry, of depth. Essentially, it won't work if you're looking at it from top down, because that's definitely going to show as if it's just painted on top. But when you look at it from a more of a perspective of a standing person, it looks as if it's going a bit like inside, right? And that was the effect I was going for. Um, so we did that. It's basically a lot of noise and a lot of iterated cracks. Nothing too special. I also used another flat fill here to create more random gradients. In there is actually a bit more displacement on these like lines, just to give it a bit more shine when you're looking at it from an angle, to sell that um, uh, effect of the ice like cracking on the interior. Um, yeah, so that's the cracks for the most part. What is this? Yeah, I also created a bubbles texture. Again, that's something that just doesn't work without actual shaders. Something like parallax occlusion or something like that, because it will just look flat, right? You're trying to create bubbles frozen in ice or air pockets, and it just shows as if it was on the surface. So one thing to avoid is to use the bubbles to drive roughness, obviously, right? Like the ice is going to be the same roughness on the surface, and then normally there would be something like scattering inside the ice that would sort of define the roughness of the sort of the volume inside, but here we just can't do that. So I tried faking it. In fact, it creates a lot of noise. I'm not entirely happy with it, but I'm happy with the shape. How did I achieve that? I might just go through it quickly again. Basically, you inflate and deflate your dots. In this case, InstaMAT has this awesome node, moisture drops, and you can just do that, and then you subtract it from each other. You do some more distorting and tiling and all that, and eventually you get something like this. Again, if you want to see it, you should go back to my previous stream. So that's that. Yeah, and then I tried creating some custom noises to create surface detail. Again, I spoke about some cool techniques, I suppose, if they're cool, for creating, like, for example, I don't know if that's going to show. Maybe I need a different HDRI, but there is a. Can I find a, yeah, here, for example, on the right, I don't know how much you can see, but there is this like almost stair stepping that suggests melting ice, I suppose. And for that, I used liquid noise and like blended it with itself. Like I blurred it, I used high pass, and I blended it with itself. The only issue is that if you go into 4K, this is going to look very jagged, and it's going to create some very artificial patterns. So you have to like control how to basically the execution size of your texture. I spoke about it last time. I think I spoke about it last time. So if you want, you can go back to that stream or ask me any questions right now. Of course, I can go back and just go through it quickly. Yeah. So that was it was just a surface noise, I suppose. And there is some more surface damage. Hey Dan, how's it going? Congratulations on your big magma eruption, you know? How's it flowing? There are so many puns, you could do now. Alright, where was I? Right, yeah, surface damage, by which I mostly mean these, like, let's say something fell on the ice and broke it a little bit, and then it froze together again. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm happy that I, placed third. Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's just pat each other on the back, like it's very important, it's very important to my ego. So yeah, but by that surface damage, I mostly mean this, like refrozen ice. Again, a detail you can see it when you like, I don't know. You wouldn't see this on a frozen lake that's like perfect, but you would see it close to close to the coast, so to speak, close to the bank. And so I thought just let's add it. Why not, right? And it's actually quite difficult to make something that looks like that has like you still see inside, but it's actually quite rough. Yeah. So that's what this is about. Again, it's not nothing too serious. You just like create a lot of noise and maybe some bigger shapes. This time I'm using like spots 5, and I'm blending it and blending it and blending it, and it's creating these like large shapes that are still going to be adjusted later in the pipeline. But this one was mostly for the height. Yeah, I'm still working on the height output, not albedo here. For this, it's good to use a mixture of like sharp, mm, sharp, larger shapes and like a lot of noise that's very high frequency and contrasty, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that you get these like I don't know, like very rough surface imperfections. I don't really know how else to describe it. It's I hope self-explanatory. If not, please again just ask. Yeah. I also added somewhere. I'm not quite sure where. Here, it's already there. I don't know where it's coming from, but somewhere. I added a bit more of a sort of directionality to it. I don't know how much it shows, but there is a directional noise in there, and I use it to drive like a sort of a windy effect. It's here, for example. You can see these details as if like some snow, some maybe small debris was like flying, you know, over the ice, and it's like leaving scratch marks, something. I don't know if that's cool or not. Basically, more imperfections there. Uh, of course, if this was an actual lake and there was like a flow going on below the water, this might actually show, but it wouldn't show on the surface. It would show like slightly below the surface, right? Like as when the lake would be like frozen deeper and deeper, these like currents would also get frozen in. Yeah, it creates a pattern there. But yeah, like maybe I'm not that obsessive to try to fake it inside the ice, right? I'm just obsessive enough to create it on the surface and call it a day. So that's there. Um, yep, yep. And so we last time we just got as far as this like final height input. I talked about how I wasn't really happy with the control of the top offset and bottom offset, that I decided to drive with the histogram shifts and levels. It's largely because of me not setting up the whole thing properly from the beginning. I had a different plan. I was going to have these like rivers, so to speak, filled with broken ice, but then I decided that like it looked better with water. So it was like a change of plans, a last minute change of plans, and so like a lot has changed sort of retroactively in the graph. Uh, yeah, that's it. Now, this blend height node is actually quite awesome, except for the sort of fine tuning that I had problems with, because it gives you not only the height output, but also the mask that different sort of gives you the binary mask of the bottom layer and the top layer, right? You also get the intersection layer. I didn't really know what to use it for. Didn't seem like something I needed, so I didn't make any use of it in this case because the height differences I have here are really tiny. Yeah, so it would be better for let's say something Dan made or our winner made, our Lithuanian winner who had like a fairly large height displacement between the rocks and the dirt, or like the rubble that was there. I guess then the intersection would be quite useful because you could isolate it like middle layer and maybe target it with some albedo map or something like that. In this case, I mostly made prolific use of this blend height. Which brings me to our craziness. That's going to be the subject of today's talk mainly, and that's the albedo map. And it's this whole monstrosity that I created, and I am sorry to say it took me like, well, first of all, it took me way too long. Secondly, I was feverish the whole time. Uh, and I also tried a lot of techniques to see just whether they would work. So it's a mess. Again, I wouldn't do this if I were working on an actual production material, if that makes sense. But for a challenge material, it's like the perfect opportunity to just go a little crazy. Okay, so Dan says that sometimes I blend the intersection with the mask to have softer edges or softer fall off. Okay, that makes sense. That's cool. Okay, let me just quickly. So I get the. And so what do you do? Do you like multiply it, or would be good? Huh. I suppose, huh? Hmm. What if we used something like overlay? Yeah, so it's sort of like that's actually like tightening, creating more of a contrasty height map. Interesting, interesting. Maximum or add? Yeah, okay. Uh, maximum. Okay, add. And so like, how much do you actually? And do you use it like this? I suppose, right? God damn it. Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. Interesting. Nice. Thanks for the tip. I'll try to remember. Boom. All right. So, now because preferably maximum. Yeah, yeah, it makes sense, right? Like it's always a bit more predictable, I suppose. Again, just you can like add. You never know where your values are going to end up, and since like there is no easy way to sort of maintain your histogram in the right part of of its like value range, it's better to use maximum, right? Yeah, I'm in love with maximum blending mode. It's sorry, I have to collect my thoughts here. So, yeah, because of the way I set up the material, I did not really have an easy way of adding snow that would like make sense, right? Like, so how does snow work, right? Like again, it's like particles of water, crystals of water that act as a little bit like dust, but not really, right? And so and also, what is snow, right? Like for our purposes, it's mostly like white, rough, yet quite reflective sometimes, with like little specks of reflectivity. Uh, Texture, like we don't have an easy way of like selling the snow effect, right? And so I ended up going for something that looks very stylized, I would say, because it's like sort of sticking to the edges and to the sort of the rougher damage that I made to the ice. I am not too happy with it, right? And this was just me trying to like figure out what a snow mask could look like, right? And so I have something like this, which wouldn't obviously look good, right? And so I keep blending it with itself, distorting it. I also wanted the snow to sort of like hang around these skate marks. I think I talked about this extensively in last stream. I added a lot of like displacement here, like sharp displacement, so that the curvature maps and the AO maps would pick up on it. And so I ended up with something like this, right? Which is very smooth and all that. And like obviously that cannot be the final result, right? And so I sort of dug a hole for myself because I knew that I was going to use more and more noises to break this up, and that really took a toll in the end because of the performance, right? Like if you keep adding noises over noises over noises, you will soon run out the run out of the GPU memory. At least in my case, I don't have anything like 4090 or something like that. So again, like planning is so very important. I can't overstress that, overemphasize that. Yeah. Anyhow, now I have watched quite a few videos on how to handle your albedo maps, right? Like you might want to start with something like just your ambient occlusion map, your curvature map. Maybe you want to create some, you know, gradient maps taken from images. Uh, Maybe just mix them with some noise, and then you just want to use some sort of logic, right, to blend them together. Now, I think I overdid it. um, where do I even begin? Um, right. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's going from where? All right. Now, so I prepared a few noises, in fact, right? Like I prepared something that I would like to call the snow, right? Again, I tried to maintain this like granular, grain-like texture with larger pieces of frozen something, right? But it looked way too much like mud, in fact, right? So I will do some crazy stuff with it later. I also wanted something very rough for these parts, so that's that. And I actually ended up using it in different ways. For example, I created these, what to call them, like frozen chunks of ice inside ice. Yeah, sometimes you get that. I don't know how it's possible, but these would be like in a proper shader. These would have depth, right? But I just left it for like the surface. It maybe looks a little bit like some sort of cement. It's not finished. I wouldn't leave it like that for a complete material. Maybe I would like slow blur it to create a bit of a sort of volumetric feel to it, volumetric touch to it. Mhm. Now, I also created like a bit of a mask for our bubbles, and then I started like creating images that would serve for the coloring purposes, right? Like I wanted certain elements, for example, these, to have different colors from the whole. And so I prepared these masks. I mostly auto-leveled them, and so I don't have to go back into the graph and just like keep picking the same outputs here to work with them. Um, then I also realized that I didn't add enough or any really variation as to the position of these cracks, and it all looked as if I just projected the Voronoi pattern over my texture. And to break this up, you can again use flood fill. This time, the node we are looking for is flood fill to random direction. So essentially what it does, it gives you random colors that we will, hello, unnamed player, hello, hello, how you doing? Um, yeah, what was I talking about? Sure, yes, the flood fill to random direction gives you a random color that will be read by a node called vector warp as the vector input. Basically what it means, it defines a direction in which the texture is going to be pushed. You can think about this in terms of UVs again, right? Like UVs, when you have a UV map, for example, in Blender, or when you just get a flood fill node, let me just quickly demonstrate that. You get a very specific texture that defines the vector space, essentially, right? Like blue means a certain direction, pink means a certain direction, green means a certain direction. You can think about it as in like 0 to 1 in x, 0 to 1 in y or u and v coordinates. And so this does the same, and it will push the whole island in one or the other direction randomly. And so it breaks these like straight lines a little bit, like it pushes them to the side, just slightly. So it's not entirely continuous. Like you don't want to overdo this, but because then it will look again CG because it will be completely random. You want to keep some sort of cohesion, but a bit of offset adds this subtle like dynamicism to the texture. I might have it. I guess I should have done a bit more, right? Like it still looks as if it's just sort of continuing in places, but you know, whatever. You can always tweak the values later. So that's what the vector warp does. In this case, I used a fairly low intensity. I exposed these outputs because I wanted all of these images to be warped in the same way, right? Like I wanted to keep these movements coherent across all the islands. And so to do that, you can basically right-click on any of these. When you have the node, you can right-click, and it says expose as input parameter, which gives you this little thing here. You can see that it's listed here as a local variable, and you just plug it into the same socket in your node. And so you can like really simplify your workflow, because like imagine if you had to go and tweak all of these parameters every time you wanted to change something, right? You can even expose this to the user uh, in the final product by saying you can promote it to from the local variables to input parameters, and input parameters will be shown at the front end of your material to the user in, let's say, a layering project. Yep. Okay, I'm just tweaking my masks a little bit, you know, tweaking different versions of the cracks, different levels, and I've decided that I didn't have enough variations on the small ones, so I do that again. And yeah, I just what did I do here? I think this was one of my experiments. I wanted to see like what I could achieve with facing normals. Facing normals will give you will sort of analyze the normal map and look at it from the like it will how do I explain this? It will like it will sort of eliminate uh, the channel that you're like looking at from like as if you point the camera onto the texture from top, you can then see the this result, right? It's kind of like extracting the blue channel a little bit, not quite the same. This is actually what I did here, I took the height to normal from the bubbles map, which is completely crazy. Like, we don't want it um, to be in any way encoded in the normals information, but I wanted to try this curvature map to give me a bit more, I guess, variation, right? I ended up using this convex output, which you can see is like giving me these like outlines, and blending it together, I get something resembling sort of like a boiling lake, if that makes sense. Um, I kept it because it was just an experiment. I don't really know how to get this effect reliably, right? Like, it's just that I kept pressing buttons until I got something that worked. I'm also using soft light, which really depends on the values that you get here. Um, Not recommended, but it's a way of creating some shapes, right? I wanted more variation. Uh, and yeah, we are getting to the actual color. Now I started with two solid colors. This like dark blue, deep blue, and this turquoise, I guess. And then I just like took some noise I had from before to just get a bit more variation. Yeah, you can see that it's sort of the directional input we had to get little stains or what have you. And then this is my favorite node, obviously, HSL. HSL, like you will never get this right in the I must have gone back 1,000 times and tweaked these colors before I was like even remotely happy with it. And as you can see, I'm actually desaturating them quite a bit, lowering the luminosity and shifting the hue here and there. You could again expose this to your user, or maybe you can just expose the result and have him like control it there. And so I get this very like almost green, very dark, deep um, color. And that was in my reference, if you remember. It was, I'm sorry, I don't have it here. Maybe I can find it quickly. Just give me a second. Yes, here we are. Yeah, it's like this sort of, again, it comes from the subsurface scattering uh, of the water and the ice. So you get this like this color and this color, and that's what I was trying to get close to. Um, I should probably speak about one danger in 3D and coloring. Like, obviously, materials that are fairly monochromatic, they look cool if they are desaturated because it sort of brings it all together. Yeah, but I think it's a trap. You just have to be very careful about the values and the tints and all that that you choose. Because you can always like desaturate the whole thing at the end, but it loses color, right? Like it loses information. It will not interact in an interesting fashion with your lighting. So it's always a danger. I actually did that before I test render it, and I put it into Blender, and I noticed that my scene is like horribly dark, right? It didn't look like ice. It looked like some, I don't know, crystal, really crystal, like diamond. Yeah, you do not want that. But anyway, for to simulate a bit of like depth, like natural uh, dark waters, so to speak, maybe at like in the evening or something like that, you do want a little bit of like dark, saturated color there. Also, one group practice that I just sort of rediscovered while working on this was to whenever you desaturate whenever you darken something, you also want to saturate it a little bit, right? That's just how I think it looks cooler, I guess. I don't know if there is any like physical optics, uh, optical explanation behind it, but I just think it looks cooler. Um, Anyhow, now the other thing I start with, and this is where we start building our actual color. You can see the cracks here. I just start with some solid, slightly bluish color. Yeah. Now, what I do here is actually I chain these HSL nodes. So if I change this, a lot of it will change throughout the graph. I don't know if this is a good practice. It might be a good practice in limited amount of dependencies, right? Because the more dependencies you have, the larger it's like a snowball effect, right? Like even though you changed a percent, 1% here, 10% there, or something like that, uh, every other step will be less predictable again, right? Like every next step will be less predictable. So here it's fine for the first like 5 uh, blends, which is basically your like ice glow. Ice glow. By what I mean by ice glow, like the fake depth I created here, yeah, and these like sort of cracks, yeah. It's fine because if I change it here, let's test it. I'm just gonna copy the value somewhere. Can I copy the value? No. I'm just gonna try like this, for example. Yeah, like it sort of propagates throughout your graph. So that's nice, right? Like you want it. But at the same time, if I kept doing it all the way down here, soon you wouldn't have any control of your color at all. Now, another thing is you should probably like analyze your graph in a sense, analyze in the Greek sense, right? Like to dissolve into parts. Um, it means that like you should probably like separate your cracks. You should work on the skate marks where it makes sense separately. You should treat your water separately. But at the same time, you need to think about layers that will all like bring it all together, and that's the challenge, obviously. Um, Now I didn't do a good job with that. First of all, I think a proper way of structuring this color would be to have two graphs that are somewhat similar in terms of what they are doing, and then at the end, I would blend the ice flows and the rivers together. Uh, and then maybe I would add some more layers on top to sort of bring it all together. Instead, I created this cascade, and yeah, it didn't work out. So like the first phase, we are basically blending all the like internal subsurface and surface details of the cracks and the bubbles, and this like glow that's largely hidden under the snow, but it still like gives you a bit of a sense of depth. And here I would like to actually blend two inputs together in some like additive fashion, but instead I just plug it into the background and I keep going. And since we are using modes like average, soft light, add sub, multiply, maximum, minimum, and all that, you will have a horrible time managing your values again. Now, I forgot the name and I wasn't able to find it again, but there was an amazing talk by a person from Ubisoft about how to handle your albedo maps predictably. Again, yeah, very cool stuff. If I can find it, I'll link it later in the comments. Basically, he recommended not to use stuff like add, right, or rather stuff like screen, right. Uh, Blending modes that will give you, that are largely dependent on the two inputs, right? Uh, he said like maybe it's much more user friendly and predictable to use the average mode, or the you don't want to use multiply too much because it will overall darken your image. So if you use like 4 or 5 multiplies, in the end you end up with a much darker image overall, and then you have to compensate, and so you use some sort of HSL overall compensation, and you end up with a mess, pretty much very similar to what I did, right? So again, like to think about this, you need to plan ahead and maybe avoid certain nodes like screen or overlay is also like not great in my experience because it messes the overlay essentially leaves your blacks and whites alone and messes with the grays, but you don't know where, right? Like what exactly it is, and it really depends on how bright the input is that you are overlaying, right? It's not the most let's say intuitive node to use. That said, I love soft light, and it's pretty much a version of that, right? It's a combination of it's a version of overlay essentially. So it's there are a lot of things to consider. Anyhow, so moving on, I started creating a lot of additional masks. This time I'm trying to isolate these like edges, right? I know that I'm going to be sort of covering them with snow. So I'm using like these white, blues, slightly bluish colors, and using different masks that are mostly based on curvature and ambient occlusion, sometimes inverted ambient occlusion. Sometimes I multiply another noise over it, and I usually just bring them from the graph before. Like I had used a lot of different noises, so there is no point to just like add another one unless you absolutely have to. So that's why it's such a mess with these connections here. Like there are tens of them because I was bringing in older noises. It's a good practice. It would be much easier, I guess, if we had portals. That is, like if we could say connect this node to this node without a connection like this, without a drawn connection. But I think the guys in InstaMAT are not huge fans of this, so I don't know if we are getting that. It's fine. Like you know, I don't know if this is like much helpful, right? Like I can't even zoom out anymore, and this connection goes all the way back to probably this height, or but it can also go even further than that. So especially for the albedo maps, you reuse a lot of the inputs from before, from height and from normal maps and all that. And yeah, I would like portals, but it's not the biggest deal. Anyway, uh, adding some more like ice glow. This time it's actually around these skate marks. Again, my idea was that like the ice would be a bit broken, and we would get some more like sediments of snow. Added more. Yeah, it's like subtle, but you can see these edges, sort of edgeware mask, but it's not really edgeware, right? It's just like a bit of stylistic highlight, I suppose. Mm, More, yeah. And I'm using like different nodes. For example, the first one is just average. And since this is mostly white and blue, you will get like a decent enough control over what you're doing. So if I lower this, right, like that's nothing. That's 100%. You get full white or almost full white. Uh, it's um, it's an easy way to control your color blending, especially if you have like one that is fairly desaturated, like whites or blacks, and the other one that's your sort of base color. In our case, these like greens and blues from before. Okay, moving on. These were sort of the edges, right? Okay. Now I added some more glow, and that's what what I was talking about before. You should really keep your elements together. I don't know why I keep adding glows here. I should have gone back and like kept it together here, right? But I didn't. I was just moving rapidly forward. I was tired, and I wasn't really like thinking about the best practice at that point. So not do not recommend it. Yeah? Essentially, what I'm doing, I'm taking this mask and just like subtly adding it with soft light, like what it does, right? Like it lightens this ice a little bit, creates more of a gradient where it was already bright. Yeah, that's how soft light works. So it's like a kind of overlay, as I said. Looks cool, no problem, right? But again, like then I had to go back many times to see what affected what. I wasn't really in control. Now here we are adding these little specks of frozen ice on a frozen ice. Again, not too happy how they turned out. Uh, Looks a bit like cement. Don't like cement in my textures unless it's cement. So not great. Also, I should speak about using like solid colors and these like gradient maps. Gradient maps are great. Obviously, you can sample a lot of values from your images, from your reference images. I almost always tweak them with another HSL. I wanted something blue, not something like yellow, desaturated, something. I knew that there was information in there, like color information, but I wanted something else. So just use, this time I like really cranked up the saturation to full, you know, lower the luminosity a little bit, and then we are adding it in. Yeah, it just gives you more variation, more noise, which you may not want, but a technique. Yeah, instead of just plugging in like solid color, you can take some texture. I just took some random noise from before and just colored it, and then I blended it in. Yeah. You can also use a beautiful node that the InstaMAT has. If I could find it, I have it somewhere. Ah, here. color variance, color variety, I suppose. Basically, what it does, it has a grain texture inside, or a noise texture, a grain texture, and you can define the range by which it's going to randomly shift with that grain texture your hue, saturation, and luminance. Yeah. You can also define how coarse the grain is. So if I go in, you can see that there is this like movie-like grain, and that's what it does, right? Like I don't know how much it translates over stream, but you can definitely see this. And again, it adds detail. Yeah, but that's us getting ahead. So we added the edge wear, we added the sort of more edge wear and more ice glow on the sides, and this is really like becoming very stylized. Yeah, we added the specs on top, and now we are going to start adding the damage that we have here, right? Like this part. Uh, Again, some more glow. Why here? Why not before? Don't ask me. No, actually, we didn't add the damage. We add snow. Now, I think my snow doesn't look snowy. I think it looks dusty. Okay, Roche says, yes, the random variance, of course, is a great node to have. Yep, nothing else to say. I would just say that maybe when you blend it together, use another noise to drive the opacity mask, so you get even more variance. Like, it's difficult to say, right? Like, if you have something like this, let's say your monochromatic, almost monochromatic eyes, the grain is going to add just a little subtle realism to it. It would be difficult to say that, like, if you just add grain all over your texture, it might destroy it, right? Or if you just add it to one part, it will look real noisy in comparison to the others. So there is always a fine balance to strike, but these nodes are mostly subtle changes at the end of your graph. I used it here to drive the I think the I'm actually not sure what it drives. What is this? This looks like some final like noise on top. It really isn't that pronounced. I think it's mostly these like white little what's it called? Like little I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know the English word. I don't know the Czech word right now. It's something. I added something. I'm an artist. Anyhow, yeah, adding snow. So I decided to go like my material wasn't really turning out to be that realistic, and so I thought, you know, well, like let's push the stylized version, and I started pushing the snow sort of around the edges. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing here. And as you can see, I kept going back and like even added some new noises because I was getting lost. I was experimenting with like different heights to curvature. This is actually a nice map because it shows these these little things. I was really proud of that. That's the liquid noise creating these like melting waves on the ice. Right, that's something I was very proud of. Again, something that got destroyed in the 4K version, but you know, if I were to maintain this, I would have to like set the execution size here and all that. Not getting into it now. Yeah. Yeah. Just adding subtle variations, driving a gradient map with that. You can't really even see it, but it's there. And then I'm again using it twice with different HSLs to sort of add to our masks. What does it do? You can see that it's like this one is brightening the snow. So if I put it almost to the top, like we lose a lot of color information because we are only using maximum. So it's mostly affecting luminance, right? We are mostly talking about ones becoming ones. So, or like you know, your darker values are going to be brighter. So this is just to sort of control the coloration and intensity uh, of the snow. I guess we could make it a bit brighter, right? Actually, it looks better. Looks even more like dust, but it has a bit more of that shiny, snowy feel. All right. Then I started adding the first level, the first sort of foundations for this damaged ice effect. First, I thought, like the bottom layer of that should be basically the ice. Yeah. So I chose something blue, something green, and I'm averaging it. I just chose something bluish to introduce into that green map, and I'm just averaging it. And you can see that it's like the bottom sort of shine to that. So love average node for coloration for albedo maps. Then I add these like ridges. Basically, I thought those would be like your broken ice, right? Like this would be the crushed ice. So that's very coarse, very white, and you can't really see through it. So that's fine. That's what we have here. Again, there is a lot of like very insane masking, creative masking. Let's go creative masking going on. Yeah, you can see that this is what the masks usually look like. Like it's a lot of noise that I somehow blend together. I use it to drive subtle color variations. You can see how it translates into this. Like it's this ridge right here, and these like dots in there. So that's it's starting to look like our map really. You're getting there. Again, I'm chaining a few HSLs, like no need to just like keep putting solid colors in. You especially in a monochromatic material like this, you just need subtle variation. Okay, this is adding these like little snowy sediments there, so it's again white. I'm using maximum because again I want to control like how much snow there is. Technically speaking, yeah. If I overdo it, it looks like this. It's crazy, but you can see that these are actually quite interesting details. I'm using maximum because I don't want to go above the sort of the highest value I have on the ice or on the snow, right? So just adding a little bit. Let's go back, tone it down. Maybe we can add a little bit. Yeah, looks better, right? Like we have these. It sort of underlines that there is a bit of you know normal detail. Let's say low frequency displacement detail. Okay. Of course, we at this point we have so much detail and so much noise that like I started toning it down. So maybe actually going lower is better. This is an artistic decision, I guess. Okay, what does this do? Oh, so this is adding like more surface noise that might look like snow. You can see it better here. Like it adds these clouds. You could think about it as some sort of air pocket in the ice. I don't know. I just added it. I was just like adding stuff left and right, not really knowing what I'm doing. More brightening along the edges, more snowy effect. This time I'm using actually default blending mode, basically a copy blending mode, and I'm using the same information from before because I noticed that I have a lot of like brightness located here that I could isolate here in this color to grayscale histogram select to sort of get a new edge mask. This is a problem for a few reasons. First of all, if you brighten something, up the chain, this will then pick up on it, right? So it's a sort of multiplicative effect, and it compounds itself. So again, if you want to be able to fine tune your shader with a lot of control, don't do this. But I thought it was an interesting technique. I saw what's his name, Daniel Perez. I think he does a lot of tutorials, or he used to do a lot of tutorials for Substance Painter, sorry, Substance Designer, and this is some of the techniques. These are some of the techniques he used in his tutorials. So I was just trying to see what they do, right? The weakness of this is like the strength of this is that you get a new mask that you would be hard pressed to get in a different way. The weakness is that it compounds sort of an error that you might. This decision on where the Instagram gets cut off, the Instagram select is used, really changes everything, right? So careful with that. Here you can see that I'm adding a bit more of that directional noise. I decided it wasn't enough what I had before. That was mostly for height anyway, so it was a bit more chunkier. This is adding just a subtle like strafing on that. Yeah, if I turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on. Yeah? I don't know if you can see it, if it shows, but it's there. It's like the sort of the wind effect. All right, now I created a frame here because to me this was like done, right? Like this surface is done. I don't want to do much more to it. Uh, there wasn't really any point to like keep piling on more snow and stuff like that. So I have this HSL just to create sort of regain some of the some of the range I had. I'm just brightening it slightly. All right. Now, yeah, creating more new noises and creating some sort of maps that I'm going to use for the water. That was a lot of trial and error, I have to say. I wasn't really happy with anything because I wanted something that was like half frozen and half liquid, and I kept getting dust, right? Like I kept getting a lot of dust and a lot of like jaggedness that wasn't looking good. And so I'm still not too happy with it. It like these little like ice fragments could be a bit sharper, for example. I was hoping that like 4K would help with it. It did not. I would say that there is a lot of work to be done. But you know, in the time allocated, I had to move on, so that's it. I'm just creating a lot of different noises to sort of try and break this up and sort of sell the effect of ice flowing in the water. I don't really know what to say about this, and other than that, it's just blending a lot of colors together, changing it, changing it. Yeah, and here it starts looking a bit more like what we want. I'm adding these fragments from before into it, into the water. I thought, you know, there wasn't enough detail, so I just threw it in. Then I ran it through the color variants, which creates this like noisy look, I admit, but at the same time it sort of looks like, I suppose, water, which has a lot of movement in it. Yeah, I didn't want to create like strong waves. If you remember, I added a wave node to sort of have large scale displacements across the texture, but it's not. It wasn't the effect I was looking for here. I was looking for like a little bubbles again, I guess, in the water. Applying it together, and this is pretty much the final material. I also created a subsurface map. If you look here, I start from the background again with this very dark map because that's mostly the color of the ice and the inside, right? Now, subsurface maps are tricky at best because you want it to be fairly saturated, but that's not physically accurate, right? But you want the information to be there so that the renderer can read the vectors of the scattering. Also, like scattering is no simple thing, right? Like it depends on wavelengths and all that, and you're not doing any sort of physical calculation here. You're just setting up a sort of a flat color mask that's supposed to tell the renderer like what kind of color it's supposed to output at the end of the calculation, which actually involves wavelengths and all that. So it really depends on the renderer you have, on the shader you use, and how much light and what color you send at it. I just, you know, by means of experiment, I just arrived at this. I don't think it's good, but you know, as I said, like, how do you even imagine what a subsurface color map is supposed to look like? It's just, I don't have the intuition there. I don't know. Might just be better to give it one uniform scattering or two like maybe a scattering color for your ice flows minus the snow, for example. But snow also has subsurface scattering, but different, and the water. So maybe three maps, right? Like three solid colors, and just call it a day instead of these gradients. This will never show like this in the render, right? So yeah, I created a subsurface material just to have it, but I don't know. I don't know if it's even necessary. Like, of course, a complete ice shader should involve subsurface scattering, but you know, how do you encode it into a texture is an open question to me. Now, I realized that there was still some detail missing in my snowy layer, and so I added some more overall, right? Like this is actually a step outside of the stylization, outside of this like edge detected snow. I wanted it to cover the ice a bit more. So I just added a material mask dust, which is a procedural generated dust node. It takes ambient occlusion and normals. So I'm taking an ambient occlusion at the end here, from also from my updated normals, which we will talk about, shortly. Uh, and I'm just creating a new dusty effect, multiplying it with some more noises, and I'm then adding it, averaging it actually across my whole image. Yeah, I'm also plugging that back into the subsurface. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna take a short break. If there are any questions or anything you would like to talk to me about, please do so now. And I'm drinking tea. Okay. Anything? No? We have a whole 3 viewers. Excellent. Um, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully this sort of train of thought, the description is useful to someone. I realize that I'm like repeating the same thing over and over again, not giving you some actual like tips on how to control certain nodes. But I don't think that, for example, Dan does that, and he's very good at it, and he has a very deep understanding of the technical aspect of InstaMAT and all that. Also, a much more experienced artist than I am, so I thought maybe I would sort of be more in that like you know I guess personal experience kind of sharing of material creation. But yeah, I can also go to into some other materials with a bit more in-depth um, description of values and nodes, right? Anyhow, moving on. This was my final snow output, I guess, and at this point it's mostly finished in terms of albedo. So I'm plugging it into this material make. As you know, material make is a node that basically creates a template for your PBR materials. I'm also using this sort of material, material finalize, which is a sort of last week's node. You can tweak the strength of your normals. You can add some more effects, tweak your colors, your values. You can also blur your height, which, if you remember, I talked about it last time. It's very important to my mind to blur your height map ever so slightly. Like 5% is like usually more than enough, but 2%, 3%, that's uh, that's that. Because otherwise you will get these like displacement artifacts, of course. Unnamed player says, nice material. Thank you, mate. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. I'm glad you think so. Yeah. Like I don't know what I was doing, but I guess I created something. Thank you. All right. About normal map. So I wanted to control this like fine detail on the surface of the ice and on in the snow because if you know, for example, when you create a car paint material, it is a very complex shader, right? Like it has it's metallic, right? Number one, it's usually pretty shiny, but it has a very complex inner structure, which is made out of like little specks of different compounds, different metals, right? Which is what gives it that like a glinting effect sometimes. It's also to protect the car. It also has a clear coat on top, right? Like it has a covering layer that protects it against I don't know flying debris and stuff like that. It can have internal structure like carbon fibers and all that. Now, to create such a complex effect, it's really important to control your normals. your displacement, your normals, your metallic maps, everything like that. And of course, one of the easiest things to do is to create a normal flakes node. Let me just create a normal flakes. No. What it is, this is basically your sort of Voronoi pattern. Again, this time with high frequency. I'm just going to increase the density. We want Voronoi. Yes, yes, that's what I'm looking for, right? Like so this is what you get. You can also create this with white noise, especially if you're working on large objects. I use this to create a few things. First of all, your overall displacement, I guess, here, right? Like I have it here. Um, I also wanted to create like a lot of difference in these areas so that when a light hits it, there will be some really rough ones and some that will be super shiny, right? Like super reflective. So there's that. And to do that, you have this normal combine node. Of course, I'm extracting my original normals from the height. Yeah. Hopefully that goes without saying. You know this node, right? Like how height normal basically takes your height information, tries to translate it into normals. I think there was some sort of discussion about its accuracy recently, but for our purposes, it's fine. And you have this normal combine. Basically, you have this slider. It's called opacity, but it should maybe be called intensity. You get this base normal, and then you blend over the new output. In this case, this super fine noise. Yeah, if I just crank it up, boom. Yeah, you see what it's doing here in the viewport, right? Like we have like suddenly it gets super rough there, and that's what we want, right? Like that's the kind of effect we are looking for our eyes. But let me tune it down again. I didn't want too much. I didn't want it to be like I don't know what that would be. That someone like hit it with a you know hot ray of air or something. That's what it would look like if it froze over again. But I just wanted a little bit to create glinting. hmm Doing the same, doing the same. I actually ended up excluding two of these sort of details because it was getting too noisy. So this is our final normal map. I should also mention, for example, two things I should mention. First of all, it's good practice to examine your height maps using this height to normal generation while you're working, because the height to normal is just we just process it better than just a pure grayscale image. We can see the ridges, the details, whether it's too sharp, not too sharp, whether there will be any artifacts that we don't like. And had I done that, I would have realized that this is way too smooth, that it needed a lot more breakup in that line. Yeah, this is okay. This is what I was pretty much going for, maybe a bit sharper. But this looks like I don't know, like walking through sand, like someone dragging dragging their finger through sand. Not exactly what I was going for, right? This is better, but not by much. So had I done that, had I been actually paying attention to what I was doing, I wouldn't have made this weird shape here. Yeah. Anyway, details, details, details. So normal combine. Again, if you want to check how this works, there, if you open the InstaMAT library material, Isolake, they use it there very well. Okay. Um, right now. I'm also creating a transmission map, and this is actually what an albedo or any sort of like post-processing map should look like. You should have a good organization, a system of how you're blending stuff together. Uh, I'm using it to create a few things. First of all, this is my roughness. So let's talk about our roughness and also a final transmission map. Now, I actually, as I said multiple times, I was quite sick when I made the previous part of the material, but here I was like getting better, so I started thinking more clearly. And this is me creating a very systematic, analytic approach to roughness. So first of all, I created a couple of masks. This one is your typical height to curvature set to convex, which will isolate your what am I saying? Your protruding shapes. Yeah. Uh, I'm also creating another one with different which was a bit more sensitive, a bit more detailed. I also brought in height to ambient occlusion, inverted it. Yeah, so I get a mask that only allows these uh, rivers because they are the lowest part of the image. I auto level it and we blend it with some other masks. This time it was just taken from the height, inverted, created also a grayscale to mask and blending it together. So it created sort of this water splash mask, right? Like it's basically the intersection mask from the height before. Um, and then I'm just using solid colors, this time really just solid colors, and I'm using maximums or yeah, maximums because I'm working from scratch. I'm working from the least rough to the most rough, I suppose. So I start with black, yeah, zero roughness, or in this case just slightly off black because nothing is perfectly reflective, right? Or maybe your mirror could be perfectly reflective, but I'm not working with that. Right. So then I'm adding the first mask, and this is just like edge wear. Again, it doesn't make sense. It's almost a cliche in 3D texturing that people add a lot of edge wear and a lot of dust to their models, to their materials. I am not a huge fan of that. I'm sick of it, in fact, but at least a little bit, helps to bring the material together. Uh, yeah, the edges, the logic is that the edges, because they are rough, because they broken apart and all that, would be a bit rougher than the rest. On the other hand, we have water washing sort of the edges of the ice, which itself is not particularly rough, especially when it's melting. So maybe I should have just like dropped it. Yeah. Anyway, how I control my amount of roughness is that I use this solid color, and this will tell you the exact number, the exact roughness of the mask you're going to be using, right? So I'm adding a 30% rough edges, yeah? 30% rough edges. Then I take another one even rougher, and this is mostly for the snow and the surface damage, right? Then I take something that's really super rough, and that's for these parts here, yeah? Again, taking something that's like 60-70% rough and adding that to snow. At this point, this is very stylized. Snow wouldn't be that rough, at least not like. That's also partly a reason why it looks like snow, I suppose. Sorry, like dust and not like snow. But I wanted a nice transition for the light. If we get a tangent angle, you can see that like the snow doesn't reflect as much. I might tweak that before I sort of call this material done, but you can see that there is like a sharp transition between the snow and the ice. I um I like that at the time, right? It's maybe too sharp of a transition here. Uh, if I had a if I had more time to polish the snow, especially in terms of normals, I wouldn't go as high in roughness for the snow. All right. Then I'm adding more of the same, basically tweaking. I also added these like little dots here, little grain. I thought it was just an interesting touch that might show in certain renders, right? Like this like these dots, these potholes, if you will. Not sure if that makes sense, but I made them anyway. And here, I'm not sure, point 10, what am I doing with that? I have no idea. What's the mask? Mask, mask, mask. Yeah. Opacity mask. What is that? I don't remember what I did and why I did it. Okay, if we Turn it off. I don't know if it does anything. Yeah, apparently this is where my brain stopped working, so there is a random low roughness value blended in with maximum. Don't ask me why. Sorry. Yep, and in the end, why isn't anything working? Yeah, there we go. All right. Oh, I see. You see, I added a bit more roughness here and there onto the protrusions. Big difference, right? Like I had to do that. Oh my God. Um, yeah, obsession. You know, it's one thing that that I have to keep reminding myself of is not to stay too zoomed onto my own textures because you think about every single detail at a scale that's never going to be visible in your materials. Yeah. So like zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. Like look at it from the distance that you would like expect someone to look at the image from. So like this is too close. This is already too close. Like this might be an appropriate, distance for your material depending on, of course, on what you're working on, right? Like if you're looking at this damage, it looks good, but like that's not how what it's going to look like from like 2 meters away. Yeah. So anyhow, that's one of the lessons, negative lessons of this stream. All right. One last thing is this overall grunge noise. I wasn't too sure if I wanted that, but it just like increases roughness overall of the ice, so it creates interesting subtle variations, especially around these areas. Subtle will make small difference, I suppose, at the end. hmm And what do we have here? Oh yeah, and then I decided that like maybe I need some more treatment for the water. Yeah. And so what I'm doing, I'm actually reducing the amount of roughness over the water because like your snow is not going to sit on the water and flow with it. It's going to melt in it or like become ice or something like that. So you actually this should be even less rough. The water should be less rough, right? Like it should be almost like zero in terms of and there shouldn't be that much like roughness differential there. But I thought, you know what, like let's leave it be. That would be a lot of work to create a new mask and like to get it out. And I also thought maybe um, like maybe there's a lot of ice in there still. Like it was just freshly melting, not accurate at all. I wouldn't go for it. But like I said, that wasn't the plan. The plan was to make crushed ice and not like shallow waters with deep ice. It doesn't make sense, right? Like the image doesn't make sense in this sense, in this aspect. All right, I just threw in a little bit more noise at the end. It's very subtle again, I imagine. Yes, just like a little bit of whitening here and there. Probably not necessary. Glinting, yes. So I already made a lot of like normal details there. That's already going to create like these like shiny spots on the ice. But I wanted more, so I took white noise. White noise is essentially per pixel noise, and increase the opacity. Sorry, increase the contrast. Then I blur it a little bit because it was way too sharp for something like this, but still, like you barely notice it. And I only wanted it to be on like what, like I only wanted it to be on the snow and the ice, right? And so I'm blending it in. It adds more noise into that. Really like stark transitions between rough and reflective surface. And that's it. That's the material. I created a transmission map experimentally. At first, that's a mistake, right? Like in Blender, transmission maps work by like where it says black, there is no transmission. Where it says white, it says transmission. So you have to invert it. And at first, I didn't do that, and it looked awful. But still, it would need a lot more contrast than that. I ended up not using it in my test render. It was better to just set it up manually. Essentially, transmission is a shader for your glass-like materials, for your water and glass materials. But if you want to get proper proper transmission effect, you should add more contrast to this map. Uh, that's another reason why the snow looks so weird, because it should be like it should cover more, I suppose. It should hide the ice a bit more and not be so transparent, right? Like it looks as if there was just a dust layer, but it should be really thick. It shouldn't allow the ice to be that visible. All right. Like I said, I am taking this material make node, material finalize node with the final adjustments. Here you can decide whether you want a more saturated one, more desaturated one. Again, if I were to prepare this for, let's say, the Blender importer, I would expose these so that I can tweak them in Blender without going back to InstaMAT. I also gathered all my maps here, right? I have my transmission map, my subsurface color, which I suppose I could have plugged into the material mode, but I didn't want to use the principled one because it adds a lot of inputs and outputs. I didn't want to bother with that, so I just dragged it here. It has to be named properly, so it will. There is a semantic system in InstaMAT, so you have to use subsurface color. You can't just type like SSS and expect it to recognize that as a subsurface color output, at least for your viewport and your renders in InstaMAT. Of course, you can have any number of custom channels that you export, whatever their name is. But there might be problem, for example, for the exporter from InstaMAT into Blender. Yeah, so we have the base color, the normal map, the roughness map. I also prepared an ambient occlusion map, but I ended up not using it. I was planning on using a path traced engine, and you shouldn't really be using ambient occlusion. It's again a bit of an artistic choice. In some cases, especially when you have like rocks or I don't know, basically like materials that have a lot of displacement, right? It might add that final contrast that really ties the material together, but ambient occlusion gets baked in a path trace engine into the render, right? Like ambient occlusion is essentially an effect of one object occluding another so that the rays can't get in, right? So you shouldn't really be using too much of it, at least in my opinion. But at the same time, for stylized stuff, why not, right? Like let's add that oomph into that image. And now, of course, we have a normalized height map. Yeah, to export, there is this Control O, export images and outputs. Like I mentioned a couple of times, as I mentioned a couple of times, I don't like it. It's confusing to me. But essentially, what you can do, you can create a template. I have this one set up quickly, but you don't need to. You can set up your your folder here, your bit depth, your format. Unfortunately, as far as I know, EXR right now only uses like a non-compressed output, so the files are quite big. I would love for the EXRs to so that we could like set up some sort of compression, like DWAA or something like that. You can never tell the difference. So I've never seen any image where you would be able to tell the difference, but it saves about 15 to 50% of the file. Like at least that's in my experience, you know. Here you can set up the again. I don't know like why we have to set up the bit depth again. You can set the resolution here, right? And then you enable your maps. Now, personally, I don't think you need 16 bits for all the maps, right? For example, a transition map doesn't really need a 16-bit depth output. You could save some, you can save some storage. So you can just turn it off, you know, export the other maps, and then just export this map alone with different bit depth. Or set it up twice because I don't know which one affects which. If that if that gets explained somehow to me, that would be sweet. Uh, yeah, and that's how you do it. You just set it up, then you get it to Marmoset or Blender or whichever rendering software you use. I tried rendering in InstaMAT. It doesn't even support my GPU, so it's a bit funny right now. But hopefully that's going to get fixed at some point in the future, or added at some point in the future. So that's that. Uh, Sorry if I was rambling a little bit at the end, especially. I'm getting tired, but hopefully you enjoy this. Thank you for staying with me, or if you're watching this in the future, hopefully this was helpful to you. If not, I guess I don't care. No, no, no. I'm not a YouTuber or anything, right? Like I just thought I'd share some of the ideas and some of the experiences I had learning this. This is actually my first fully completed material in InstaMAT. It was a role of experimentation done in when I had a fever, uh, and so there are a lot of mistakes, a lot of things that I learned doing that I want to do again, and a lot of things I learned that I will do again. And if there is interest, I may just when I get to make some more stuff InstaMAT, I can sort of do this kind of breakdown again. So have a nice evening. Have fun. You can obviously find me on this on Discord in the InstaMat channel. I go by Adam Shimek, which is my actual name. So please don't steal my identity. And or you can find me, I guess, under DKNS Design on YouTube. I used to have Instagram. I don't use my Twitter, so don't look for me there. I will set up some social media thing uh, in the not so distant future for my portfolio. So I guess I'll advertise that later. All right then. So bye bye. I'll see you soon. Cheers.